Welcome to the Reload here on Preediction, the esports video talk show network. You guys can feel free to learn more about what's next to come in the worlds of the Call of Duty World League, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and others every week here on Twitch. And if you happen to miss a show, no worries. You can actually catch us on demand on our YouTube channel as well at Preediction. Also, I'm excited to kind of let you guys know a little bit more about me to kind of give somewhat of an update for those who may not be super aware of myself. My name is Landon Sanders. I go by Lando just because I'm a big fan of Star Wars. So there you go. I am 23 years old. I've been involved with esports since around 2010, 2011. I do come primarily from the Call of Duty esports scene, but that hasn't stopped me from kind of dabbling a little bit in other ones as well. I do and kind of commentate over a number of different titles. I've hosted and kind of worked at different live events over things like PUBG, Fortnite, Gears of War, Apex Legends, and obviously, like I said, Call of Duty as well is definitely my kind of major. And speaking of majors, I'm actually currently attending Full Sail University to get my degree in sportscasting under the legendary Dan Patrick. So who said esports people can't have a college degree? It actually is a thing from time to time. You don't see them too often, but I have a feeling that over time, as franchising as well starts to become more of a factor, you'll start to see it be more of a thing. But I have to say, it's an honor to be headlining and kicking off the incredible vision that exists out there with everybody at Preediction. And one thing that's awesome is that this network is meant to be unique. It's not just meant to stream. It's also meant to kind of output a number of different content pieces, and to kind of work on this prediction analysis is going to be fantastic. And this will over time start to become the go-to network for in-depth esports analysis. All these hosts, or rather all these shows that we're going to have are going to be hosted and kind of worked on by professional gamers and analysts out there. And like I said, we're going to be covering all kinds of different major esports titles, things like NBA 2K, League of Legends, Smash, and others as well, including Call of Duty. And if you guys are interested, you can feel free to check out a fellow show. We've got Hard Reads actually going to be going on tomorrow. Smash with TK Breezy and Austin. That's going to go on tomorrow, June 26th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time and 3 p.m. at Pacific, right here on your go-to network for Call of Duty and other esports analysis. So let's go ahead and kind of get involved here. I'm gonna kind of talk about a few different things here today. The first primary topic that I have for the show is I want to try and line things up, or rather start things off with the final roster change period of the year, right? So this is interesting. Everybody's eyes are on this. Everyone's excited to kind of know about how these roster changes are going to work. And for me, this is super important, right? This is massively important for the entire Call of Duty World League in terms of how this roster change period is going to work out. And this was a thing for me, at least early on. I wasn't thinking we were going to see too many changes. I mean, I even was someone to go out there and tweet and basically kind of point out and say, I think that this last roster change period should solely be used for like your last means, right? You should only be using this last roster change period if you absolutely have to. And that wasn't the case, right? Like I was hoping this would be kind of like the area that you get into if you're in the red, right? You should only get here unless you have to be. And we saw 11 out of 16 teams in the Pro League make a change. Now, technically, that 11 has now gone to 12 if you include the recent change that was made by Genji. But like I said, this should have been the last resort. But we ended up seeing a ton of very interesting roster changes, ones of which include a lot of very minor details, ones that also include the situation that involved Luminosity and Envy. Now, the conversation in the word loan has been thrown out there a lot. I think a lot of people are kind of confused exactly what does that mean, how exactly is this all going to work. And essentially, the loaning process is something that's not really too typical maybe in Call of Duty esports previously, but it's being involved now because of what is to come, right? So usually in past, it'd be like, okay, I don't really want this player. It's whatever. But now with franchising on the horizon, it's important to try to keep all your cards with you. If you can kind of hand out that card and be able to get it back, that's what you want to try and do. So all of these loans, these contracts are still owned by the original organization. So I know with a lot of people who are kind of worried right now with the 100 Thieves situation, guys like Crowder, et cetera, like Priest, are they going to have to go back to FaZe? Well, by definition, that is who owns their contract, right? That is who owns them as of this moment. While another team is currently paying or is working on them, that doesn't mean that they're always going to have a guarantee to keep those guys. But FaZe did that for a reason, right? They want to try to keep those guys moving into next year. And if 100 Thieves manages to get in franchise, they can obviously kind of work out those deals from time to time. So that was kind of a lot of Call of Duty esports fans' first eyes, or rather their first opportunity to kind of look at what the loaning process is and kind of get somewhat of a hint as to what is going to be franchising next year. So in this loan situation, one of the biggest roster changes of the entire period goes down when Envy ends up loaning Hook to Splice, then LG ends up loading Gunless to Envy, and then shortly after, Envy ended up going back to their old guard, picking up Assault. Now, the first thing that I saw whenever this roster change was announced was the timeline was filled, the Reddit threads were filled with what is this change? How does this roster change make sense? Why is Hook, the star player of Envy, going to a team of which he's competing against? Like, why, if anything, why, if Envy is having issues with Hook, why don't they just put him on the bench? Why don't they make roster changes to make room for Hook? And everyone was saying, why is Envy no longer pretty much putting all their faith in Hook? And that is not at all the case, actually. If you really look at the details of what happens with this loan, this is Envy long-term investing in someone like Hook. So like I said, people are calling this the worst roster change of all time. And I will say, as of this moment, right, like short-term, it's not a great one. It may contend for one of the worst of all times, but it's not meant for right now, right? This roster change is meant for the long game rather than the short term. It isn't meant for the current situation that we find ourselves in. In organizations' minds, it's not even just Envy, it's not even just Splice, it's not even just all these orgs that are guaranteed for franchising. Everybody else has their eyes on franchising as well. Like, you look at these organizations who are picking up the most odd players. Like, everyone's like, okay, why are they picking up this guy? Why is this guy not getting picked up? There's a reason for that. There's a brand behind that player. There's a situation that makes sense where that buyout can be a lot higher than it will be next year. I mean, all of these organizations have their eyes on what will be next year, and if they know they're not guaranteed, they just want to make as much money as possible before they end up having to hit the exit, right? Before they have to end up exiting stage right before, you know, the franchising obviously begins. So for me, I love this move from NBA to make an attempt. I think that this is a solid idea at trying to combine Gunless and Hook. Well, how does this make sense? How are they going to manage to get Gunless? So the biggest issue that people see whenever I bring up is that, oh, well, obviously Hook has to go back to Envy. Why wouldn't Gunless just go back to LG once this is all over? Now, the big change, the big differential between both of those things is that from what I have heard from sources, people who are close to Hook, it's a matter of, okay, Hook likes the organization. He doesn't like the players he's playing with, or he's not a fan of how players are working right now on this team. If you're Gunless, according to what I have heard, is that Gunless doesn't like anybody. Like, Gunless is not happy with his position on the organization. He's not happy with the players that are involved, anything along those lines. So that is the biggest issue for me, or rather the biggest kind of point that you can kind of bring up right now, is that both of these guys are actually in much different situations. While they're both on loan, Hook is cool. Hook's fine with this. He's kind of upbeat about being in this situation, but he knows that he has a home whenever he goes back. Gunless is not exactly in that same boat. So I think the thing that can actually happen here is that whenever Gunless pretty much was announced that he was being loaned to Envy, his big point was, I walked through the doors of the Envy HQ and I felt like family. I immediately felt like family whenever I was first added on to this team. When I first walked through the door, he made it known that he felt something different. And so this is the big emphasis that I'm going to bring up, is that, like I said, Gunless right now, he's not happy with LG. He doesn't want to go back there. Hook in this situation, maybe not super happy with Envy. We know 100% he's probably going to go back. Like, I don't really have any major doubts about that. So if you are Gunless, like I said, you don't want to go back to LG. So whenever franchising rolls around next year, after these next 2-3 months go by, LG's going to give Gunless a call and say, hey, are you excited to come back? Like, hey, we're going to try to build this roster around you. And he's going to say, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave Envy right now. I do not want to join your organization. I want nothing to do with you guys compared to the way that I was treated on this brand compared to yours. That's just what I'm speculating. That's what I really think actually will happen and most likely could be the case. So in this situation, Gunless then is going to pretty much deny that he wants to be there with him. And then at that point, Luminosity has their hands tied. They don't really know exactly what to do. They're kind of somewhat locked in because it's a matter of, do we choose all of the players that we have right now? Do we choose our main three? Do we choose our main four? or do we go with our star player? And if the star player doesn't want to be there, there's only so much that you can do with the team. So that is my big situation right now, is that Hook's going back to Envy, and Envy may or may not have just gotten gunless as well. Now the buyout is obviously, it's triple figures. It's not looking, or six figures, excuse me. It's in the $200,000-$300,000 range for a buyout of this magnitude, right? That's only going to increase with franchising. So if you're Envy, you have a great situation to take gunless and also to get back Hook, of which you're getting Hook for free, and the ability that you're getting gunless right now, who is currently on your lineup and having great conversations, great meetings with you. You're in a great spot to have both of these players locked down now for next year. Now, the one thing that I want to point out really quickly before I move to the next team is that I am worried a little bit, kind of looking super far off, how these guys are going to work together. Like, whenever you have the personalities of guys like Gunless and Hook, I think they're going to need somewhat of like a 100 Thieves change up. They're going to need to have someone to kind of rebrand, to kind of change the culture, essentially, of their organization, of their roster. They're going to need an end-game leader. They're going to need someone to kind of change things up a little bit, because we saw with 100 Thieves, it wasn't easy, right? It wasn't super simple for them to just kind of work things out. It required a few months of work. It required them to lose events. It required roster changes to kind of come into play. And I think for every team moving into franchising, they need to make sure they have a dedicated coaching staff, guys who are ready to work with these players, because there's a lot of organizations out there who aren't ready yet. There's a lot of organizations who aren't prepared for who do they grab as a coach? Do they listen to players? Do they listen to the staff? Like, there's going to be a lot of situations where teams aren't going to be ready or aren't going to be prepared. This is Envy's situation to get ahead of the game, to be pretty much be having conversations in the short, or rather the long game rather than the short game, which is exactly what they're up to right now. They very well might have just gotten gunless, and they're definitely getting back Hook. So for Splice, great move. I like the idea, which we'll get into them here in just a little bit, or in just a moment. But for the most part, a great situation for Envy. I like this long game. I think it makes perfect sense. But like I said, you are currently allowing for your lineup to really go through the ringer. They are, without question, not in the greatest situations right now. Let's go move on to the next team. Luminosity, right? In this situation, they lose Gunless, who has been their main guy without question. However, they do manage to get some young guns. They grab Brack from units, which is pretty much free, right? I mean, this is a great situation for them right now to be, in a spot where they can look toward the future, which I think is important, right? For franchising, you need to be investing in the young talent. You can't go wrong by picking up these guys, considering you got them both for a very low price, right? I think Brack was probably free. Skies from Elevate, I think, was rumored or was reported as 10,000. So that's actually not a bad move at all, to be investing like this and to get guys that you can either, sell off in the future, or at least have them to kind of build up your team for franchising. And the thing is, at the very least, you're going to get your kind of return investment. My big question, and we got a little bit of a teaser last night getting to watch Luminosity in the Pro League, was my big question is how is Skies going to play, right? How is Skies going to play now that he's off of that Elevate team? He has the ability to shine. He has the ability to now kind of play with a star-studded lineup. How is he going to perform with all of those things? Because we kind of know what we're going to get from Brack, right? Brack has constantly been tweeting. He's been making it known that finally I can focus on just playing the game. I don't have to worry about my organization situation. I don't have to worry about my team situation, making sure that I'm getting paid. Now we can just kind of relax, which this is going to be a great situation for them. In terms of the new guys that they added, the new pieces that they add. My big problem with Luminosity, because I like them, I do like the team, but I don't love them, and I don't like the SMG duo as they currently stand, because Can, Slacked, and John, who have not really been having the greatest of years. John, without question, has been having a slower year, that's for sure. And I mentioned whenever I had first started kind of recording, or rather writing down the new roster, I forgot someone's name. Like, I was like, okay, I got Slacked, I got Formal here, we got Brack and Skies. Who's the last guy that I'm thinking of? Why can I not think of it? It was John, right? I couldn't remember John's name, and the reason was because he's had a forgettable year. He really has. A guy who has been lining it up, considered one of the best players in the last few games. There hasn't really been a whole lot to kind of look forward to. And so if you're looking at a less than impressive John combined with Slack, can they really hold up versus the SMG duos of 100 Thieves? Can they hold up with the Optics, the Genjis, the E-Uniteds, etc., the SMG combos of the world? And with new updates, is that going to only help? Right? There's obviously rumors of the new update coming out today that's going to affect the SMGs quite a bit. How is that going to work out? I didn't even mention E-United. How is that going to work out with this particular team? Is it going to help them? Is it going to kind of bring it back to an even playing field, or are they only going to get distanced even more from everybody else? And that's my big thing with LG. I like the additions that they bring on. I think they get some nice, talented young players that can definitely do some work. I have my questions, but I think that they are sitting fantastic at the Maddox. I think they're in a really good spot with the ICR. But in terms of their SMGs, in terms of their SOG players, I just don't know how that's going to work. And we've seen teams in the past have really good AR combos, but still not succeed. We talk about UIU, right? When they first pick up Parzellian, they've got him, Mayhem, and Methods are looking fantastic. But those guys can only do so much, right? You need the entries. You need the guys who are going to be the first ones in the fight to really do some damage in order for the ARs to start to see some success. The guys, the back lines to see some success. So that's my biggest issue with Envy right now, is how can the old guard, how can John and Slack actually do in this situation? Can they compete? And maybe this new update will actually help them. We'll obviously see as that kind of goes on. But they did take down UIU last night, which we'll get into here in a little bit. Next team we have to talk about before we kind of close out the roster mania discussion is the new Splice, right? We obviously talk about short term. Their roster is looking fantastic. They gain Hook, obviously on loan from Envy. Overall, that makes their lineup Hook, Temp, Looney, Aqua, and Jerd. Without question, you look at this team on paper, it's a very scary group. I mean, it absolutely is. I mean, this definitely could be a championship contender. This could be a very solid lineup that we're looking at for the future and saying, oh, like this is a team that could really be in the conversation. They can be in the top 4 easily, and based off their results last night. So like I said, with Hook and Jerd on the front lines, Looney has got his group. And that's the biggest thing that Splice has always had an issue with ever since this roster formed at the start of the year was arguments. Can these guys work together? Are they willing to be able to go through the ringer with each other to see the lack of success? Are they willing to kind of go through the grind? Regardless, now Looney has his group in order to make that happen. You get a guy like Hook, much similar to how Hunter T got Priesta, a guy who's not going to be super vocal, a guy who's not really going to be involved in a lot of conversations or problems. He's going to be quiet. He has no problem taking direction. So that's going to be nice, especially in a mode like 5v5 where you desperately need that. So, like I said, my only issue with this change for Splice, because right now it's great. Long term, though, are they going to be able to keep Hook? If not, then what do they look toward for the future? And also, how is Hook going to work out now with the amount of very talented rosters that, or rather, the amount of talented players that he plays with now? And this is the thing that I was talking about: Hook and Gunless, Hook, Temp, and whoever you want to throw out there, Jerd or whatever it may be, Aqua, Looney, however. How does he deal whenever he's not the main Slayer? Can he work out in that way? And surely that's possible, but we haven't really seen it work out as of yet. When Decimate started to play a lot better for Envy, Hook's stats started to dip a little bit. Whenever Hook started to play well, Decimate's stats started to dip a little bit. So that is my big question: is can Hook kind of be that secondary punch? Can he be that extra uppercut in order to really knock out a lot of these talented teams? That question is still up there. So like I said, I think for Splice, they're in a really good spot. They have 4 very talented players, or rather 5, but you know what I'm saying, like 4 talented Slayers who are meant to really go out and slay, plus an awesome end-game leader like Looney, who I think is going to be able to orchestrate the troops. He's got his roster, he's got his lineup, the team that he wants to work with. I think this team's looking great for the future and definitely is involved in that top 4 conversation if they continue to improve. Now, recently, there was a change that also went down regarding the roster or the organization known as Genji. They have dropped Nagafen, and they actually go back toward their bench and pick up Spacely, who's been there for a while. And this is post the 3rd roster change period, so everything that I was talking about was kind of involved in the last 3 days, June 17th to the 20th. All those changes were kind of made around that time. This was made just afterwards. So this is interesting, right? Because Genji, for those who have been watching the Call of Duty World League, for those who watched Anaheim, they just finished 2nd. So why are you already trying to make roster changes toward a team that has just played their best Call of Duty ever, right? Their best Call of Duty they have ever played, without question, the second best team at this tournament. They make a change. They drop Nagafen for their old teammate, the guy who was in the origins of Genji. He was the one who basically got them to this organization in the first place, Spacely. And like I said, this one was totally out of left field. This one made not a whole lot of sense to me, and nobody knows exactly why. I say it doesn't make sense to me in terms of, like, it wasn't really rumored, like they were having no issues, nothing really sparked it exactly. But this change, like I said, happens right after they get 2nd at CW Anaheim. Nagafen finishes off with a 0.86 AKD. Not the greatest, but my guess has to be internal problem, internal issue. Maybe whenever the Gingy guys are facing off against the 100Ds of the world, they're saying, they have an IGL. They have a really good coaching staff. Maybe we need something like that. Maybe we need a dedicated IGL for the future. And so they give the call to Spacely, and obviously he is very humbly and ready to take the opportunity. And that for me would be my guess. That'd be the thing that if I was Gingy, I would be looking toward as well, because they are a very talented group of guys. They have some fantastic Slayers right now, but they need the leadership. They need someone to kind of work alongside them, to kind of be the major factor with them. So like I said, my talks about the old LG, the old Luminosity roster, who looked like one of the best at the start of this year, was that they needed a coach. They needed an in-game leader. They needed someone to watch over them and to give them criticism. They need someone to be the final word, and Gingy may have taken that step. They've got the Slayers to do it, but maybe they took a step in the right direction. I'll be honest, I don't mind this move from Gingy. I know a lot of people were kind of confused about it. I'm confused about it as well, but I like the idea of it. I like the idea in fruition. We'll see if it actually does pan out, but the idea of it is actually really good. But like I said, the influence, by the way, I'm only going to talk about this for a very short time. The influence of this last roster change period is huge, right? This may be one of, I mean, in terms of Call of Duty being a non-franchise esport, this was the last major roster change period that we were ever going to see like this, and not a whole lot of people are thinking about that. This is the last time will ever see something like this go down in Call of Duty esports history again. We remember for the OGs who remember back in Black Ops 2, the Ghost days. I mean, what, 2012, 2013, 2014, when everything was going astray. I mean, everybody was changing up. Every team, excuse me, was changing up their lineups. It's the last time we're going to see that, because franchising is a new beast. It's a new thing. It's a new system. There's only two other main ones that are out there right now to kind of balance or kind of go off of in terms of the Overwatch League and obviously the LCS. So it's going to be interesting, right? And a lot of these organizations are thinking about franchising. The roster changes that we see are based off of that. And like I said, to see every team outside of Optic, FaZe, E United, and 100 Thieves make a change is definitely interesting, because it's going to have a lot of implications for what rosters will look like heading into the most important year in Call of Duty esports history. Now, quickly, I want to try to cover the first day of Pro League yesterday with some of these new lineups to kind of break down really quickly. We saw Units take down UIU 3-1. We saw Luminosity, the new Luminosity, take down E6 3-1 as well, which, to be honest, isn't really that surprising. I was probably thinking we would see that kind of result. A lot of people were very curious about the recent change that, Enigma 6 made for their team. I was as well, but maybe, like I said, there could be a reason behind it, possibly. And then FaZe, they end up taking down Splice 3-2. Now, this is an interesting kind of situation, because now we have the guys on FaZe who are looking like a top 4 team versus Splice, who just make this, this crazy change, this loan that they get Hook for. And I'll be honest, in the first hardpoint, when we got to watch this new Splice team play for the very first time, they outslayed FaZe badly. But FaZe still won the hardpoint. So that kind of goes to show to me, the skill is there, right? They had everything to work out in their favor. It was just a matter of a few mistakes. Like, I'll relate it to baseball. It's as if you were up super high at the top of the 8th inning, for example. Like, you're kind of toward the latter parts of the game. You're up, a crazy amount toward the top of the 8th, and then you just have a few mistakes. You have a few mistakes that allow that one play to happen, that one, that one double to kind of go through that just starts to spark everything. That kind of starts to change everything up a little bit. You played the entire game fantastic, but just the minor details, the minor mistakes just kind of put the other team over the edge. So I think for FaZe, they got outslayed pretty bad, but they win the hard point. They look great in the S&D. They got off to a very hot start. We saw Splice start to kind of control things. It was a very close control toward the end. I think it ended up going down 3-2, and then they ended up winning a somewhat close Seaside hard point, and then FaZe took the S&D. So for me, if you're looking at this team, if you are Splice right now, I'm kind of happy with this. I'm kind of happy with this result. This is kind of what I was expecting to see. A team who has a lot of talent that's almost like about to break through the door. A lot of talent there, but they just need to work on the extra things. They need to work on their teamwork. They need to work on the excess stuff. And they had their great moments of slaying. That was pretty much what made this series go down to the way that it did. It had those close moments, but just it lacked the teamwork, which of course is going to be expected since this new lineup was formed, rather this extra player was added just only, like 3-4 days ago. But like I said, if I'm Splice, I'm happy with this. They quietly displayed at their infancy, they have a very close series versus a top caliber team. I don't think you can I don't think you can look at that and be angry. I don't think you can look at that and be like, oh, well, we should have played a lot better. It's like, no, at your very first particular series, you had a good moment. You had a really good play versus one of the best teams in the world. But like I said, my big question on Splice is, can Hook be that contributing piece? Can he have those moments where he goes off and be kind of like that second or third option from series to series? And can we see Aqua at times take over in those big ICR games? With one thing with 100 Thieves, that they always have Octane, rather. He's always there to kind of pick up the pieces for when they need. And also, and I know I'm talking mostly about the teams that made roster changes, if you're FaZe, this is kind of scary. Like, you're kind of scared if you're FaZe at this moment, because the respawns, they're not going to get any easier for you, right? A lot of these new teams, what are they looking to be good at first? Respawn. They're looking at the hard points. They're looking at the control. Search and destroy is going to come later. The big thing for FaZe is that they struggle with the search and destroys. You know, granted, they take down Splice yesterday. Big deal, right? Big deal in that situation. But for me, I think FaZe needs to fine-tune their S&D if they want to continue to be a team in the top discussion, if they want to kind of be in that major lineup. So moving forward, let's go ahead and talk about the last particular game of the night, which was Evil Geniuses facing off against 100 Thieves, and that one came down to a Game 5, Round 11. So from what I saw in this series, it was really a matter of 100 T not showing up. Like, it really was. Like, they just did not have the greatest performance. They were at the top of their A game, was EG. They were constantly working from behind in terms of 100 Thieves. They got a little bit complacent, I think, in this series. I thought that they were constantly, like I said, they were working from behind numerous moments. They just didn't really have a whole lot to work with in this situation. So I know 100 T has been even making some comments talking about their biggest thing that they want to be careful of is the complacency gene. They want to make sure that's not affecting them when it comes down to their gameplay. And it happens, right? And that's the thing that happened with a number of different dynasties in the past, the Optic Gaming dynasty. As soon as they win the championship, what else is there to look to? What else is there to look forward to? Once you have climbed the top of the mountain, we can even relate this to sports, right? I know a lot of people have kind of talked about this. The Golden State Warriors, which in the situation right now isn't the greatest example, but in previously, they're winning championship after championship, and they're looking at the regular season and saying, yeah, like, you know, whatever. Oh, we lost this game. Big deal. Steve Kerr was talking. The biggest thing to deal with is making sure to make the midseason interesting. And not that we're seeing the exact same moment right now from 100 Thieves, but a loss versus a team like Evil Geniuses in that way isn't the greatest. So we'll see as they kind of continue and look as still the best team in the world right now, moving on into Miami, moving on into champs and whatnot. But in terms of the Pro League, will they kind of keep up that slow level of play, or will we start to kind of see them take a little bit of those advantages, and how will that translate from online into you know, the regular LAN play? So last thing that I want to talk about is the denial situation. I want to kind of close out with this one a little bit, because for those who may be a little bit curious, we can go ahead and bring up the tweet as well. So there was a situation with a guy that I obviously know, BL Fire, for those who have known about it. Essentially, Denial Esports came through into the Call of Duty World League this year and made a lot of problems. They make a lot of issues. They pretty much have not paid their players, and we're starting to kind of see the remnants of that happen in form over time. And obviously, this is a tweet from BL Fire that pretty much is a guy who is heavily involved with the organization, that had recently kind of formed with them. There was a lot of good conversations between the two, and Denial doesn't really have the greatest history in their past, essentially. They don't really have the greatest track record. So coming onto this new team, it was, or rather this new kind of, you know, found movement for them. This was a new step. And that's the thing that I am interested with, is that since this new step kind of came forward, how are they going to counteract their history? How are they going to kind of, you know, basically wipe away all the issues they have suffered in the past? And they didn't do it. They are back to the same way that they had been previously. Obviously, we all know what's happened with Denial. Their league spot has been sold, and Units is now the name of the team in the Call of Duty World League, who is still moving on, looking for an organization. But it's unfortunate that we are still seeing remnants from this. We're still seeing the chargebacks. We're still seeing the problems and all the memes that come out about Denial Esports and all the things that they have promised and still yet to do. But I want to try to take this moment really quickly and just say to every young player that is out there right now, look at your contracts. Evaluate who you are playing with. I've had people come to me before in the past, even involving this exact Denial team. I had someone come to me and say, should I play for this team? And I gave them my personal opinion. No, get away from them. Don't even think about handing over your contract, handing over your position to an organization who does not have a great track record. And I had someone recently say to me in regards to a few of these situations, my organization is getting mad at me for asking so many questions. They're getting mad at me for asking a lot of, different things about how the infrastructure of the org is working and all those things. If you're playing for a good organization who's willing to pay for your hotel, they're willing to pay for your ticket, they're willing to pay for all these things, they want to hear your questions. They want you. You have a value to them. So in this situation, unfortunately, like we're saying with the denial situation, like I said, it is starting to come to an end. Let this negative be a lesson for those in the future to look at your contracts, to evaluate how things are working, because most organizations want to hear your questions. They want to be evaluated. They want to hear what is going on with you. So, not the greatest way to kind of close out this one, but I gotta say though, at least use the negatives as a positive in some way. But like I said, guys, and for any fans that actually do miss, if you are kind of catching this at the end, or if you are watching this one maybe a little bit later, for those who are interested, you can feel free to check out the Reload with myself, which is going to be live on Tuesdays. Also, you can check out tomorrow. We have a broadcast going down on Hard Reads, which is going to be live tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, as well as 3 p.m. Pacific with TK Breezy and Austie. They're going to be discussing some Super Smash Bros. You guys can feel free to check out all of our esports analysis programs on demand by looking up Preediction on YouTube. That's with 2 E's, as well as on Twitter as well by @Preediction on Twitter. But guys, we want to thank you so much for tuning in to our inaugural one. This is going to be awesome. Like I said, the group here has been working so hard to do their best to try and make this to be something unique, to make it something special. And I think with what I've been told, the meetings and the conversations that I've had, it seems as if we have something really, really good going here. So make sure to stay tuned for those. Be on the lookout for a number of different esports shows. If you have an interest in one, but maybe not another, like I said, we're gonna have everything. Like every single major esports show is going to be covered live and here. But hey, this is Landon Lando Center signing off for the final time, saying thank you so much for watching the Reload, and I will see you next week.